Imagine coming home, expecting a warm welcome, only to find your mother humiliated and broken, forced to scrub the floor by the very man who should have protected her. Jake, a self-made millionaire, walked into a nightmare. His mother, Linda, reduced to a shadow of herself under his stepfather's cruel control. It was a sight that would change everything, peeling back layers of sacrifice, hidden truths, and a family mystery that not even all the success in the world could have kept at bay. Jake's return to his family home that day wasn't anything he could have prepared for. You see, life has this way of testing us, especially when we least expect it. The moment he stepped through that door, the image before him hit like a gut punch. There was his mother, Linda, a woman who had poured every ounce of herself into raising him, kneeling on the floor with a mop in hand, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. And the one standing over her? Frank, her husband, looking down at her with a cruel satisfaction, like he'd just won some twisted game. There's something raw about these moments that make you question the sacrifices we make in the name of family. Linda's strength had always been quiet, a strength that often goes unnoticed because it's woven into the fabric of everyday life. But in that moment, her son saw her resilience cracked, her dignity fraying under Frank's relentless demands. She'd become someone forced into silence and service, bending under the weight of Frank's controlling ways. That sight pulled at something deep in Jake, a rage so intense it felt foreign. How often do we see the truth we don't want to see because it's just easier to look away? Jake's fury was palpable, his fists clenching at his sides as he took it all in. He'd built his life on the values she'd taught him, values rooted in sacrifice and truth. And yet, there was Frank, mocking everything she stood for with that smirk. This wasn't a moment for quiet diplomacy. Jake stepped in, voice sharp and steady, letting Frank know that his reign was over. Sometimes the heart demands justice, not just peace, and Jake's heart was on fire. No one treats my mother like a servant in her own home, he thought, a statement that became his own truth. When Frank tossed back a sarcastic reply, dismissing Jake's words as if they were nothing more than a child's tantrum, Jake didn't flinch. His voice didn't waver as he told Frank that he'd call the police if this behavior continued. In that moment, Jake became more than just a son, he was Linda's protector. And in that role, he felt his own family bonds tighten, his resolve crystallizing. Have you ever felt that clarity, where the lines between right and wrong are drawn as bold as day? That was Jake right then. Jake wasn't one to walk away when he set his mind on something. He reached out to his mother, offering her a new life, away from this place where she'd been broken down piece by piece. A home of dignity, where she'd find comfort and peace. As he took her hand, it was as though the air around them changed, thick with relief and anticipation. Linda's life was about to change, and with it, Jake's purpose deepened. How often do we get the chance to rewrite our stories, leaving behind what no longer serves us? For Jake, this wasn't just about rescuing his mother. It was about reclaiming their family's truth, one that had been twisted and manipulated by those who didn't deserve their loyalty. His journey wasn't going to be easy, but sacrifice and truth would guide him. Linda's pain was a burden they both carried now, a truth hidden in the shadows ready to be exposed. There's something almost magnetic about the mystery of it all, the familiar yet unfamiliar layers of a family we think we know. And Jake, well, he was just getting started. The weight of Linda's words hung heavy in the air. When Jake finally heard his mother's quiet confession, it felt like a shattering blow. She explained how Frank, the man who was supposed to be her partner, had transformed into something unrecognizable. His warmth was gone, replaced by a controlling cruelty that saw her not as his equal, but as someone to command, to treat like a servant in her own home. For Jake, the revelation stung with a sense of betrayal. It was a reminder that sometimes, The very people we let closest are the ones who twist the truth to suit their own power. Linda's eyes, though filled with sadness, also held a glimmer of relief. A weight finally lifted as she opened up to Jake. She recounted the silent sacrifices she'd made to hold her family together, the small humiliations she'd endured day by day. And through it all, she'd kept this burden hidden, hoping it would change, that love would win out over control. There's a harsh truth here that many ignore. Hoping for change while giving up pieces of yourself rarely brings the peace you seek. For Linda, silence had become a sacrifice, and now the truth had finally broken through. Jake's mind swirled as he absorbed the depth of his mother's suffering. In those moments he saw her life unfold in shades of sacrifice and sorrow, pieces of her spirit chipped away by Frank's manipulation. Jake understood now that this was about more than just family pride. This was about a truth too painful to ignore. He saw the pattern, the way family ties sometimes bind us in knots of obligation and guilt, even as they're used against us. There's a lesson here. The truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply we try to bury it. The anger that surged through Jake was electric. An intense need to protect the one person who had always been his unwavering support. Linda's reality revealed a darker side of family ties, one that Jake could no longer ignore. He realized that his own success, his achievements, they were all rooted in the strength and sacrifice of the woman before him. And now, it was his turn to be the shield she so desperately needed. How often do we find ourselves challenged to repay those who've sacrificed for us, to become their guardian in return? As Linda's voice softened, Jake felt the complexity of family dynamics weigh on him. Family, it seemed, was a tapestry of loyalty, truth, and sometimes painful realizations. Linda's experience was a stark reminder that not all sacrifices should be made in silence, and not all family ties are worth preserving. Some truths, when hidden, only create wounds that fester, growing silently until they can no longer be ignored. Jake felt that call to action, his purpose as clear as ever. He'd stand by Linda no matter what. Jake's resolve solidified with each word Linda spoke. He couldn't turn back, he wouldn't. His mother's truth was now his, her pain interwoven with his own as they faced this mystery of loyalty and betrayal together. He could feel it in his bones, the sacrifices they'd both have to make in the days ahead. And for Jake, nothing mattered more than reclaiming the family they both deserved, one rooted in honor and love. There was no turning back now. The path before them was set, and together they'd face whatever came next. The confrontation between Jake and Frank was like fire meeting ice. Each word exchanged crackled with tension. Jake stood his ground, his face a mask of determination as he looked at Frank, this man who had betrayed the very foundation of family. Frank, however, met him with a cold, sarcastic grin, dismissing Jake's anger as if it were nothing but a passing storm. In that moment, Jake realized just how deep Frank's disregard for their family's truth ran. He wasn't dealing with a misunderstanding. He was facing a man who thrived on control, indifferent to the pain he caused. As Jake spoke, his words sharpened with conviction, his voice steady and unyielding. He'd grown into a man of strength and integrity, and he wasn't about to let anyone, not even a stepfather, undermine the dignity of his family. Frank's laughter was chilling, a taunt that dared Jake to act. But Jake wasn't a boy anymore. This was a confrontation rooted in years of sacrifice, a moment that demanded justice over submission. It's a hard truth, but sometimes, confrontation is the only way to reclaim what's been taken from us. Jake's threat to call the police hung in the air like a promise, unspoken but unmistakable. He wasn't bluffing. Frank's smirk faltered just slightly, a crack in his facade that showed he knew Jake wasn't backing down. And for the first time, Jake saw a hint of fear flicker in Frank's eyes. It was a powerful reminder that the truth, when wielded with purpose, can cut through the strongest defenses. Jake understood now that he had to be his mother's protector, the one to stand between her and a man who saw her as nothing but an object to control. In that room, with every word exchanged, Jake could feel the ties that had once held his family together fraying. Frank's contempt was like poison, twisting every word into a weapon. But Jake wasn't moved. He saw Frank's bitterness for what it was, a desperate attempt to cling to power. Sometimes, standing firm in the face of darkness is all it takes to shatter the illusions that hold us captive. And Jake, well, he was more than ready to see Frank's illusions crumble. As the tension reached its peak, Jake felt a strange calm wash over him, a clarity that came from knowing he was doing the right thing. Frank might have mocked him, but Jake's loyalty to his mother was unbreakable, forged in years of shared sacrifice and love. There's a strength in knowing who you are and what you stand for, a power that can't be shaken by anyone's disdain. And Jake, armed with that truth, became unstoppable in his determination to protect what mattered most. The confrontation ended with a silent understanding. Jake was no longer just a son. He was Linda's warrior, her shield against the storm that Frank had become. In that moment, Jake knew the fight wasn't over, far from it. He was just beginning to uncover the depths of Frank's deceit, a mystery that would soon reveal itself layer by layer. And as he turned to leave, he felt the weight of his mother's pain lift just slightly, knowing he'd done what he needed to do. The next step, however, would demand even more. Taking his mother's hand, Jake led her out of that house with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about rescuing her from Frank's grasp. It was about giving her the dignity and peace she'd sacrificed for so long. Jake's mansion, a symbol of his hard work and success, would now be her sanctuary. As they arrived, he saw the way her eyes softened, taking in the beautiful space that would now be hers. In that moment, Jake understood that sometimes, the most meaningful gift we can offer is a safe haven where our loved ones can truly breathe. Linda's life had been full of compromises and silent endurance, but this new chapter was about rewriting that story. Jake wanted her to feel cherished, to understand that her sacrifices hadn't gone unnoticed. He had every room prepared, every comfort accounted for, to show her that she deserved a life of care and ease. It's a powerful shift, realizing that those who've given so much often find it hard to accept love in return. But Jake was determined to make her see that she'd earned every bit of this peace. With each passing day, Linda began to blossom in her new environment. She moved through the mansion like someone reclaiming a part of themselves long forgotten. For Jake, it was heartening to witness her relax, to see the light return to her eyes. In a way, he was not only giving her a new life but rediscovering the warmth and strength she'd always had. Sometimes healing requires a change of place, a space that lets the soul breathe, free from past pain. And for Linda, this mansion was more than walls, it was a place to heal. Jake and Linda found a new rhythm together, a relationship strengthened by the journey they'd just undertaken. They shared meals, laughter, and stories, bridging the gap that years of silent suffering had created. In offering her a home, Jake realized he was also grounding himself in the values she'd instilled in him: compassion, loyalty, and resilience. Every interaction became a reminder that family isn't just blood, it's the sacrifices we make, the truths we share, and the love we build, even after hardship. Linda's gratitude was profound but understated, her eyes saying more than words ever could. As she settled into this new life, Jake knew he'd made the right choice, not just for her but for the legacy of their family. He felt the weight of their shared experiences lift, replaced by a sense of hope and renewal. Linda's presence in his mansion added a layer of warmth, turning it from a mere symbol of wealth into a true home. For both of them, this wasn't just a new life, it was a reclamation of what family should truly be. But in the midst of this peace, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. Frank and Carl had left scars not only on Linda but on the family legacy itself. There were whispers of secrets, the lingering shadow of deceit that had yet to be addressed. Jake knew that despite this new beginning, there was still a mystery to unravel, a truth buried beneath layers of betrayal. And he was ready to face it, one step at a time, with his mother by his side. As days passed in their new life, Jake started piecing together the remnants of the family estate, only to uncover a dark web of deceit woven by Frank and his uncle Carl. The family property, which held so much history and sentimental value, had been manipulated right out of their hands. Jake's heart ached at the thought of how Linda had sacrificed so much, only for Frank and Carl to conspire behind closed doors. He realized that this wasn't just about reclaiming property, it was about reclaiming the truth they'd been denied. Sometimes the only way to move forward is by facing the truth head-on, no matter how painful. Determined to fight for his family's legacy, Jake dove into legal battles, consulting with lawyers and scrutinizing documents, unearthing lies he hadn't even imagined. He began seeing Frank and Carl for who they truly were, men who thrived on power and control, using others as mere stepping stones. The experience was exhausting, each revelation more shocking than the last. But Jake's resolve was unwavering. This wasn't just about money, it was about righting a wrong. And isn't that what true sacrifice is? Fighting for the truth, even when it seems impossible. With each piece of evidence, Jake's case against Frank and Carl grew stronger. His lawyers warned him that this legal fight would be tough, but Jake didn't waver. In his heart, he knew Linda's sacrifices deserved to be honored, her truth finally brought into the light. Family ties can be fragile, shattered by greed and deception, yet Jake's sense of justice kept him going. He was willing to face this legal storm, knowing that no amount of wealth could replace the satisfaction of seeing justice served. Carl's betrayal cut especially deep. He'd been a part of Jake's life since he was young, a familiar face that had now twisted into something unrecognizable. For Jake, it was like losing family twice over, first to deception and then to the reality of their greed. But he held on to the truth, using it as both shield and sword in this battle. Sometimes family isn't defined by blood but by loyalty, trust, and the courage to stand up for one another. And Jake, with every ounce of determination, was redefining what family meant. Linda stood by Jake's side throughout the process, a silent but powerful presence. Her sacrifices, her endurance, became Jake's inspiration to keep fighting. Together, they sifted through documents, remembering the legacy that once brought them pride. Jake felt a deeper connection to his mother, her strength becoming a part of his own. It's remarkable, isn't it? The way shared struggles bring us closer, even as we stand against those who seek to divide us. As the legal fight grew more intense, Jake knew this wasn't just about property, it was about setting things right for the generations to come. He couldn't ignore the feeling that they were getting closer to uncovering a long-buried mystery. It wasn't just a matter of winning in court, it was about unmasking the family secrets that Frank and Carl had tried so hard to hide. Jake was prepared, his determination stronger than ever, ready to uncover every layer of betrayal until the truth stood bare for all to see. Just when the case seemed tangled beyond repair, a surprising ally stepped forward. Lucy Adams, Carl's former assistant. She was quiet but resolute, a woman whose integrity had been suppressed by years under Carl's manipulation. Jake watched her, sensing the weight of her decision to come forward. With her confession, Lucy began unraveling the secrets that Frank and Carl had fought to keep buried. She offered Jake a glimpse into the web of deceit they had spun, revealing just how far they had gone to claim what wasn't theirs. It was a brave step, proof that truth can emerge from the most unlikely places. Lucy's words held a power that shook the very foundation of Jake's case. Her confession painted a picture of years of calculated lies, a conspiracy aimed at twisting the family's legacy for Frank and Carl's gain. She shared documents, whispered accounts of meetings, and hidden letters that proved the depth of their betrayal. Lucy's courage reminded Jake that even in a world steeped in deception, there are those willing to risk everything for the truth. And isn't that the essence of sacrifice? to stand by your values even when it comes at a personal cost. As Lucy's story unfolded, Jake felt a surge of gratitude mixed with disbelief. Here was a woman who'd spent years witnessing the worst of Carl's schemes, now risking her own security to set things right. Her revelation added new dimensions to the case, giving Jake the evidence he needed to confront the lies that had held his family hostage. He saw her as an ally, but more importantly as a reminder of the strength found in shared values. In a way, they were both fighting for something greater than themselves, a truth that could finally break through the shadows. Lucy's testimony also shed light on her own personal struggle, the sacrifices she'd made by staying silent for so long. Jake saw in her a reflection of his own journey with Linda, the painful endurance that had been necessary just to survive. For Lucy, this confession was more than just words. It was a release from years of complicit silence, a step toward reclaiming her own integrity. And for Jake, it was a reminder that family isn't always defined by blood, but by shared battles and truths. Lucy's confession was a beacon, guiding him closer to the justice he sought. Jake and Linda took Lucy's courage as fuel for their fight, her revelations weaving together the pieces they'd been searching for. It was a powerful alliance, built not on shared history but on a shared commitment to exposing the truth. As they pored over Lucy's evidence, Jake felt the gravity of their mission, to restore not just their family's property but its honor. With each new fact, they peeled back the layers of betrayal, inching closer to justice. Sometimes, allies appear when least expected, their truth becoming part of your own. Lucy's confession was the turning point, a spark that ignited the final push toward uncovering every lie Frank and Carl had crafted. Jake knew they were on the brink of something monumental. The mystery surrounding his family's legacy was beginning to unravel, each revelation pulling them closer to a resolution. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, bound by a shared truth and a determination to see justice served. And as Jake prepared for the trial, he felt a newfound strength, knowing that truth was finally on their side. The courtroom was filled with a tense silence as Jake, Linda, and Lucy took their seats, bracing for the battle ahead. The air was thick with anticipation. Years of deceit were about to be laid bare for all to see. Jake looked over at Frank and Carl, both men visibly uneasy as they sensed the weight of the evidence against them. It wasn't just about property anymore. This was about exposing the truth, peeling back the layers of their betrayal. In that quiet moment, Jake felt the enormity of their sacrifices, the silent strength that had brought them to this point. It was a battle not just for justice but for redemption. One by one, the witnesses stepped forward, each testimony chipping away at the facade Frank and Carl had built. Lucy's voice was calm but unyielding as she recounted the schemes she'd witnessed, each word a nail in the coffin of their deceit. Jake watched the jury's faces, seeing the truth take root, the realization that this wasn't just a legal case, it was a story of betrayal and survival. With each revelation, Jake felt his resolve strengthen. Sometimes, justice is about giving a voice to the silent sacrifices made along the way, and Jake knew that voice was finally being heard. As the trial continued, Linda's eyes shone with a quiet relief, a weight lifting as years of humiliation and pain were brought to light. She held her head high, embodying the strength she'd always shown Jake, even in her darkest moments. Jake felt a surge of pride watching his mother's resilience shine through. This was her moment as much as it was his. For years she had endured, silently bearing the burden of Frank's cruelty. Now, with the truth on their side, they were both reclaiming the dignity that had been stripped away. It was a powerful reminder that sometimes victory is the ultimate act of resilience. The prosecution presented Lucy's evidence with precision, each piece adding another layer to the case against Frank and Carl. The courtroom was riveted as documents were shown, detailing the fraudulent schemes they'd concocted to steal the family's property. Jake felt the impact of each piece of evidence, a vindication for the sacrifices they'd made to bring this moment to life. There's a certain satisfaction in seeing justice take shape, watching the lies crumble under the weight of the truth. And for Jake, it was a moment of profound clarity. The family's legacy was finally being restored. As the verdict was read, the room erupted in whispers, a collective sigh of relief mixed with astonishment. Frank and Carl were found guilty, sentenced to return the property and face the consequences of their actions. Jake looked over at his mother, her face softened with a quiet, exhausted joy. This wasn't just a legal win, it was a restoration of their family's honor, a reclamation of everything they'd sacrificed. The years of betrayal had finally been eclipsed by truth, and Jake knew that they were free from the shadows that had haunted them. Walking out of that courtroom, Jake felt a sense of closure, but he also knew that this was just the beginning. Their story wasn't over, it had merely shifted into a new chapter. With his mother by his side and Lucy as a trusted ally, Jake felt ready to face whatever came next. The mystery of their family's legacy had been solved, yet life held more challenges, more truths to uncover. For Jake, the journey of sacrifice and resilience continued, but with a newfound strength grounded in justice and the power of family bonds. With the trial behind them, Jake and Linda felt a renewed sense of purpose. Their victory wasn't just a win in court, it was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of truth in the face of betrayal. As they stood side by side, they knew that the fight had strengthened them in ways they hadn't imagined. This was more than just reclaiming property, it was about reclaiming their identity, their dignity. Jake looked at his mother, seeing her as not just a survivor but as a symbol of unwavering strength. In their victory, they found the courage to help others facing similar battles. Determined to turn their experience into something meaningful, Jake and Linda decided to start an organization dedicated to supporting abuse victims. They wanted to be the light for those still trapped in silence, people who, like Linda, had suffered quietly. It was a daunting task, but their resolve was fueled by their journey. They wanted to offer a safe haven, a place where truth and compassion could thrive. In the end, they knew that true victory wasn't just about reclaiming what was lost but about building something new from the ashes of pain. Their organization quickly grew, reaching out to those in need, each story echoing the sacrifices and silent endurance Linda had once known. Jake saw their efforts as a way to honor his mother's resilience, to transform her pain into hope for others. Linda became a guiding force, sharing her experiences, her story becoming a beacon for others. In her, people found inspiration, proof that even the deepest wounds can heal. They saw that sacrifice, when shared and understood, can become a source of strength for an entire community. As word spread, people from all walks of life came forward, drawn to Linda's story of survival and Jake's unwavering loyalty. Their organization became a family of its own, a place where truth was honored and sacrifice was acknowledged. Jake found himself humbled by the connections they made, each person adding a new layer of meaning to their work. It reminded him that family isn't always defined by blood but by the bonds we forge in our shared struggles. Together they were creating something lasting, built on the foundation of their hard-won resilience. Linda's journey from silence to empowerment resonated far and wide, her story inspiring others to reclaim their own lives. Jake watched as his mother transformed into a voice for those still trapped in the shadows, her strength becoming a symbol of hope. This was her legacy, a testament to the power of truth over betrayal. Jake felt a profound sense of pride, knowing they were helping others find their way to freedom. Through each life they touched, they saw the impact of their sacrifices, the ripple effect of resilience and courage. As they continued their work, Jake and Linda knew their story wasn't over. Life had tested them, forged their bond in the fires of sacrifice and truth. But their journey was just beginning, a path filled with new challenges, new lives to touch. Their experience had become a bridge to something greater, a purpose they hadn't seen coming. And together they walked forward, side by side, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that their strength and love could overcome anything life had in store. So now let me ask you, what are you willing to sacrifice to protect the ones you love? Jake and Linda showed us that even when the truth hurts, it's the only path to a life of dignity and respect. Sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones we fight within our own families, facing those who've hurt us the most. But how can you apply this lesson? Maybe it's time to reflect on the sacrifices you're making and whether they're truly leading you toward growth and freedom. So what do you think? Are you ready to take the reins of your life and face the truths you've been setting aside? Ask yourself, is there something in your life that needs to be uncovered, a hidden truth that could bring a new sense of freedom? Now's the time to act, to turn sacrifice into a stepping stone toward a fresh beginning. Comment below to share how this message resonated with you, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications to keep learning about transforming your life with courage and truth.